So good morning, everyone. I think we're just going to give it another minute to allow the numbers to level out, and then we'll start in another minute or two.
The rate of people joining seems to have slowed a little bit. We're at 107.
Okay, we're at 10:02, so I'm happy to make a start. Thank you, Kate. Okay, so good morning and welcome, everyone. So welcome to this webinar, which is to outline the funding opportunity, the Healthcare Technology Translation Partnership Scheme outline stage. Just to make you aware that this webinar is being recorded and it will be uploaded to the Funding Finder webpage after the conclusion of the webinar. So just to start with introductions, my name's Andrew Eustace. I'm a Senior Portfolio Manager at EPSRC in the Healthcare Technologies team. I'm joined by my colleagues Kate Redding, a Portfolio Manager in the Healthcare Technologies team, and Philippa Hemmings, who is the Head of Theme. And both of my colleagues are going to help answer some of your questions at the end of the webinar. So we do have a packed agenda today. I am going to provide a little bit of background and context to the opportunity to start. Then I'll talk you through the funding opportunity, listing some of the key aspects, and then we will listen to a couple of invited talks from successful Healthcare Impact Partnership previous awardees, and they'll provide their perspectives on the call and hopefully provide you with some guidance and things to think about in your prospective applications to this opportunity. Then we will have a very brief demonstration and explanation of the Konfer platform from the National Centre for Universities and Business, and then we'll finish this webinar with the Q&A session. So I'm expecting with this agenda we should finish at around about 11:30. So just to start, hopefully many of you are aware that we published the refreshed healthcare technology strategy in March of last year, following an extensive consultation and engagement process with our community. We see the strategy having been co-created with our community, and the overall vision of the strategy is to stimulate advances in transformative engineering and physical sciences research to have an impact in health and ultimately enable people to live healthier lives. Since publishing the strategy, we have been putting it into practice, and this opportunity is another way in which we are continuing to do this. So the diagram on the left gives a summary of the strategy with 3 key challenges that sit at the heart of the strategy, and these are improving population health and prevention of ill health, transforming prediction and early diagnosis, and discovering new interventions. We also identified a number of important enablers that we feel research within healthcare technology should address, and these are shown in the colourful outer segments of the image. All these aspects we feel are important in delivering our strategy. However, the 2 which we feel are most relevant to this opportunity and will feature heavily in your applications are improving translational readiness and patient and public involvement and engagement. So I'll now take you through a summary of the funding opportunity. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read the opportunity on our website. I'm going to cover I think possibly the most important aspects of the opportunity. Obviously, I can't cover everything, but today I'm going to cover a little bit of background and the aims, the funding and eligibility and application requirements, then touch on the process and the timeline, give a little nod to the mandatory expression of interest, and finally end talking about the assessment criteria. So in terms of background, the Healthcare Technology Translation Partnership Scheme is a continuation of the previously run Healthcare Impact Partnership Scheme, which ran between 2013 and 2019. So after that concluded, we commissioned an independent report to try and understand the value and impact of the HIP scheme, to provide evidence as to whether the scheme continued to address a need. The evaluation was carried out in early 2020, and using the findings of this evaluation alongside our consultation with our strategic advisory team and other strategic partners, the HTTPS opportunity was created. And you'll obviously notice, having read the independent report, that there are some similarities but also some differences. However, the aims are somewhat similar, but the overall aim of the opportunity is to accelerate the translation of research towards products and practices by working in partnership with key stakeholders across the healthcare sector. We hope that this opportunity will give applicants the chance to harness these productive collaborations with both business and clinical or healthcare partners to help deliver impact and navigate the tricky and sometimes very long translation pathway. So now to detail some of the expectations and requirements of the applications. We expect that applications will progress basic and fundamental engineering and physical sciences research towards proof of concept and validation, and this is key. Applications really need to have a substantial and significant component of engineering physical sciences research or generating new knowledge within this area. We expect that applications will address unmet clinical needs or offer significant added value over current health solutions, particularly within one of the three challenges which I talked about earlier. Applications also need to ensure that there is a clear route to translation for research outcomes by developing a translation and impact action plan, and this considers the specific translation context and the challenges within your research project area and the affected community. We expect that you will engage with a diverse range of relevant partners to ensure the research is co-created and co-delivered with users, and with that we expect PPIE to be embedded throughout the aims, objectives and operations. So a little bit about the funding and eligibility. We have a budget of up to 10 million, and applicants can apply for between £400,000 and 1.5 million. This is the 80% economic cost, so applicants can apply for at the upper end 1.88 million, and based on this we expect to award between 7 to 20 successful awardees. This is obviously dependent on the size of the amount that the successful applicants have applied for. Applications can be for up to 4 years, and there are standard eligibility rules that apply, but there are also specific funding opportunity eligibility rules that apply, as you might expect. Just to highlight, based on some of the emails that we've received, just to highlight the technology readiness levels, this funding opportunity will fund projects from TRL 2, and we expect to see acceleration towards TRL 3.5. So in practice, this means principles should have already been demonstrated through experimentation, and proposals should aim to take research or technology through to kind of proof of concept and very early validation and in a relevant environment. So just to state that more applied research and initiatives aimed at advancing technologies closer to practical application and commercialization at the subsequent TRLs are out of scope for this opportunity. And just to state that EPSRC does not fund product development or clinical trials. And yes, there is more information on the Funding Finder webpage about what we will and what we will not fund. However, if after having read the Funding Finder webpage and you're still not sure, we are happy to receive an email from you, and we will get a response back to you as soon as we can, because we are aware the opportunity is open. So in addition to the usual outline criteria, there are additional application requirements that I'll explain a little bit more in the assessment criteria section of this presentation. But just to highlight that, you will be required to submit a translation plan, and in this plan you have to demonstrate a clear understanding of and detailed approach to navigating the current, but also think about the future barriers to translation, and that you have to demonstrate that funding will be used to significantly accelerate translation. In terms of partnerships, it's expected that the partnerships you choose provide support and guidance required to navigate pathways to generating impact in the UK health sector. You will be required to partner with clinical or healthcare professionals. This is mandatory, but partnerships with business are not mandatory, but they are welcome at the time of application. You may choose to use part of the application to detail a well-defined plan in acquiring and developing appropriate industrial partners or partnerships. And for those who go down this route without confirmed industrial partners at application, it's expected that those that are brought on will be meaningfully engaged with for some time prior to the conclusion of the project to inform and aid onward translation. And also, I've mentioned already that patient and public involvement we expect to be embedded within many aspects of the application. So co-creation, co-delivery, and embedded engagement with patients and people with lived experience or health professionals. In terms of timeline, this opportunity, as I'm sure you're aware, is now open. We would like you to, well, you have to submit an expression of interest by the 14th of November. The opportunity is open until the 12th of December, and we only accept applications whereby there is a corresponding expression of interest having been received. The outline expert panel will take place in February 25, and those who are successful at that stage will be invited to submit a full application, and they'll do so between March and the end of May, with the panel meeting in October. So this is just a diagrammatic depiction of what I've just explained, but just to highlight that the outline panel will be an expert panel, and the full application will go to postal peer review, and you will have the opportunity to respond to reviewers' comments. So I've mentioned the expression of interest already, but this really is just to hammer home the point that you have to submit an expression of interest by the 14th of November before submitting your application. If you haven't, unfortunately, your application will be rejected, and this really is to help us understand the numbers and the spread of applications to ensure our processes are appropriate. The expression of interest won't be assessed, but we have asked for a number of details from you. Not a lot, so we hope that it isn't too onerous a task for you to complete, but please do complete that once you know that you intend to submit an application. So then moving on to the assessment criteria, there are some standard criteria and some opportunity-specific criteria, and vision is one of the standard assessment criteria. However, we have added a couple of questions within this to help us gauge whether your proposal really is a good fit for the opportunity. So overall, we're asking what you are hoping to achieve with your proposed work. We need you to explain to us that it meets the strategic aims of the opportunity, that the proposal is sufficiently developed to apply for the scheme in terms of TRL and not not too high a TRL as well, how the project will address a clear unmet need and what the proposed impact will be, and then the standard questions are concerning you to explain that your proposal is of excellent quality and importance within and beyond the field, has the potential to advance current understanding, is timely, and impacts world-leading research. There are also criteria of the approach. So this is how you are going to deliver your proposed work, to explain that it's effective and appropriate to achieve your objectives. At the outline, this is, well, at the full application, you'll be given a lot more space to detail your approach. And the same for the vision. The additional criteria is also the applicant and team capability to deliver. So this is your opportunity to explain or detail your team and how you plan to deliver the proposed research program, but also ensure that you have got a relevant balance of skills and those within the team have relevant experience appropriate to the career stage to deliver the proposed work. We're also asking for you to detail a few of the outline costs. Again, you will have more space in the full application to provide more details, but at this stage we're not necessarily looking for the detailed costs or a line-by-line breakdown, but we want you to demonstrate to us that your resources that you're requesting are appropriate and justified, and that they represent an optimal use of resources to achieve the intended outcomes. And then the opportunity-specific criteria, as I've mentioned already, you will be assessed on your translation and impact plan. So we're asking, how has onward translation and impact been considered in the proposal? And assessors are looking for evidence of, well, details of your plans and strategy to develop the proposal. Outlining your proposed route to achieving patient benefits, and also highlighting and overcoming the perceived barriers to translation specific to your project, but also thinking about after the award has ended. So this could include further financial support, required advice, training skills, or additional partners. We like you to demonstrate that you have an appreciation of the requirements and criteria in order to meet this further support as well. We'd also like you to detail what support you've acquired within the team to help you navigate the appropriate and immediate and future translation pathway, and any current engagement that's already taken place or planned to take place with potential downstream funders, partners or regulators, outlining the status of these discussions. And then finally, looking at the PPI and partnership working plan, we appreciate there may be some overlap between this and the translation plan, but we're expecting that, and you can detail that in your application. But for this assessment criteria, asking you to provide details about your plans to embed patient and public involvement and partnership working into the proposal. So we would like to see evidence of how co-creation and co-delivery will be prioritised with a range of partners from relevant health sectors. How will you engage with them? And also what activities will be conducted through the lifespan of the proposal and why they are the most appropriate. And then the final two are somewhat linked, so how the anticipated technology or tool will be accessible and suitable for the benefit of the intended users, and how you have considered equity, health equity in your research. So as I've mentioned a couple of times, I haven't covered all aspects and eligibility criteria within this presentation. So if you are looking at this presentation at a later date, here is a link to the opportunity. Also to restate that the webinar will be uploaded to the Funding Finder page, and additionally we'll be uploading a FAQ document listing all the questions that we've answered, and also providing some answers to any that we haven't necessarily been able to answer today. So in terms of questions, we will be answering your questions in the Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so please use the Q&A facility on the Zoom channel. However, we request that any project-specific requests are probably better suited to sending us an email whereby we can ascertain a little bit more information about your project. And yes, and probably have a more considered response. So please send project-specific queries via email. So thank you very much for your attention, and now we are going to move on to the hearing the invited talks from Professor Thomas Krause at the University of York and Professor Matthew Brooks from the University of Nottingham. So this is where I hand over to you, Thomas.
Thank you. You put my slides. Yeah, okay. So this is my project. I was obviously in the last round of the previous HIPS, and it's called immunodiagnostics. So we were trying to build an immunosensor, and we had good support from clinicians. That's Andrew Brown and Phil Conahan. And we also had support from 2 companies and sort of a network at Leeds. Now, next slide, please. So what's the point of the exercise? Well, we had previously in a program grant developed these technological capabilities. So we had made a little box that can measure the immune response. We had, and this is all based on a grating-based sensor that we developed to set up a surface wave. So it works a bit like surface plasmon resonance, but we believe it works better than that. And we've also shown, using this technology, we've shown protein detection. So these were all preliminary results that showed the technology works. Now, putting all of this together, doing this in blood, doing this in a device that really works is still a long way away from what you see in front of you. And that's basically what we asked for in this project. Now, the key issue was we are technology providers. And I think many people in the audience will feel like this. So as physicists and engineers, we make technology. Now, the clinicians and the medics, they're wedded to a disease. You need to find that link. So initially, this procalcitonin is a marker for infection. So we thought that was a good route to go. We thought about detecting bacterial versus viral infection and so on. But we didn't really care, if we're brutally honest, whether we detect cancer or heart attack or infection. To us as a physicist, it doesn't really matter. We just want to do something useful and interesting. Now, so then if I can just go 2 slides ahead, please. Right. Then we did a PPI. It was PPI, now it's called PPIE, same thing. We did a PPI campaign on the build up to the submission. And I would argue this was the most important step we took. In that, so we invited these patients, and we have health scientists at York. They run this project called Involvement at York, and the lady you see twice, that's Hannah Gray. She runs this, so she helped me tremendously. So that was very useful. So then we talked to a number of groups of patients. Here's one of them, and you notice it's all on Zoom because this was in June 2020, the height of the pandemic. But the patients were very willing to engage. And so we asked them what technology, what it could be used for, and how we'd like, do you want on a smartphone? Do you mind fingerprint? All sorts of technical questions. And then the guy on the bottom with the headphones, he said, look, I don't care. This is all wonderful. What I want, I am immunosuppressed. So I suffer from rheumatoid arthritis, and I need to take immunosuppressants. Otherwise, the disease will kill me. So I constantly worry about getting infected when I go out. I really want a test I can do at home where I can test my immune response and then transmit this to the clinician. They tell me how to adjust my medication. And that was quite an eye-opener. And then we realized there's about 500,000 people in the UK of that kind. So we thought that's a reasonable cohort. And we then engaged with an expert at Leeds, who is the UK lead in sort of rheumatoid arthritis, and he was very supportive. So I just want to make the point, this PPIE, don't just do it because EPSRC tells you to. It's really important to understand what the patients need. So I cannot emphasize this strongly enough. Right, go back one slide, please. So before submission, I just mentioned understand the need of the end user, and we did that, and that was extremely useful. What we hadn't done so much, we thought, okay, our technology can do this, so let's go ahead. We didn't do enough of understanding what the market already offered in that space. And once we progressed, we realized there were other technologies that could do the same, and it was not always obvious why our technology would be better and why anybody would pay for our technology rather than buying or using what already existed. So I would argue, and that's why I put a red cross there, it's really important to consider this as well. Not just say, oh, my thing can do this, but there's other sensors on the market or other therapies or whatever you're doing, and why would anybody buy yours and not the one that exists already? So I think it's a big question we need to critically ask ourselves before we progress these projects. Okay, so what's the opportunities provided? Well, I really enjoy the flexibility of EPSRC funding. So, I mean, the assessment is always very rigorous, but once you've got the money, you've got a certain freedom to really follow the mission and not follow the exact detail you put in the proposal. And this led to us, in fact, pivoting. We initially developed this healthcare application, as we said, and we're very keen on that. But then we also realized the same technology could be used in an industrial environment, and we then started working with a major multinational chemical industry, and we realized our sensor was very useful for them to do process monitoring, and we then had an Innovate grant and so on. So I would argue we somewhat pivoted away from healthcare, but we're now progressing this further, and we will come back to healthcare once we have improved our instrument and our technological capability. So I think that's very important. You mustn't always stick rigorously or religiously to what you said. You just have to be open for opportunities. Then I also like, the fact that you have to, this is a focus on translation. Some of my colleagues say, oh, translation is boring. Translation is not for me. I'm a pure researcher. And I always think that's the most stupid argument somebody can make, because recognizing problems you need to solve to translate the technology can open really interesting research questions. So I always feel it's a circular argument in that you identify a translation, you realize I need to solve this and this problem, that opens new research questions, which you can then solve, gives you good papers. At the same time, you progress the translation. So I think that's a very important synergy that people need to recognize. Now, what were the challenges? So we did get blood from York Hospital, but the ethics form took me about half a year. And you might think, what? It wasn't that difficult, but the hospital people and the physics people, they think differently. So you need to really engage and understand what exactly it was. So they take things for granted that I hadn't even thought about. And then the forms are very risk averse, because you don't want people to play around and then infect a cohort or do damage, which is easily done. So we have to be careful. And then also Osram, our initial industry partner, they pulled out. But I said we then found a chemical industry and progressed the technology in a different way. So again, this emphasizes the need for flexibility and agility to progress your research. Now, if we now go to the final slide, which talks about my company. So about a year into the grant, we incorporated a company, and you notice on the opening slide, I had IDX on the side, and now we have Forest on the side. So this stands for Photonic Resonant Sensor Technologies. So we did spin out the company, and we did get some pre-seed funding. So we really are doing translation now. But as I said, we're not pursuing the healthcare just now. We're pursuing industrial process monitoring. But the vision is always to come back to the healthcare, because as Andrew already said, getting a product, a healthcare product on the market is a long and arduous route. And we've chosen the detour by industrial process monitoring to get there eventually, but not quite yet. Nevertheless, I mean, it's very exciting. We have formed a company, it's going well, and I can only thank the HIPS initiative to give us the, the resources to do this and the support. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thomas, for sharing. That was really useful insights there, particularly regarding PPI, the requirement to be flexible, and obviously the time taken to carry out the ethics form. So thank you very much for sharing that. I will now pass on to our next speaker, Professor Matthew Brooks.
It says I can't share my screen. I think it's because somebody else is sharing.
Okay.
Sorry, Andrew.
That's okay. I think you should be able to share now.
Okay. Okay, can you see my slides, everyone? Yeah?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. So thanks, Andrew, for the invitation to speak today. This was something that our HIP grant started almost exactly 3 years ago. So we're now coming to the end of it, and it's great to be able to share a little bit about what we've done. So first of all, this was in the spirit of a healthcare impact partnership. This was really a partnership between the University of Nottingham, where I'm based, two companies, one called QSpin in America and one called Circa Magnetics Limited, who are based in the UK, UCL in London, and a national charity called Young Epilepsy, who obviously look after young people who are suffering with epilepsy. So I'll say a little bit about what we were trying to do. So our field is magnetoencephalography, which is a form of brain imaging, functional brain imaging. So this is a diagram of a neuron, and neurons in our brain work by sending small electrical currents between one another. That's how our brains work. That's how our central nervous system works. And those currents generate magnetic fields. And so what that means is those magnetic fields will pass through the skull and to the outside of our head. So at any one time, there's a load of magnetic fields sitting around our head. So if we were to surround our head with a bunch of sensors like this in a machine that looks a little bit like this, what we can do is we can measure those magnetic fields. And in diseases like epilepsy, we get abnormal currents through assemblies of neurons. So these currents that you can see here in red, they're abnormal. And we can detect that with MEG. And this is incredibly useful information. But we were talking, obviously, a lot to the clinicians. And so here's what an MEG scanner looks like. And what the clinicians will tell you is if you've got a child with epilepsy and you're trying to scan them, you maybe need to scan them for an hour or so in this. It's big, it's scary, and children with epilepsy simply won't get in it. And if they do get in it, they won't get in it for very long, and they will move their head. And so whilst this machine can pinpoint very accurately in the brain where epilepsy is being generated, actually it can't, because the kids with epilepsy who you want to scan won't get in the thing. So the vision was of a much simpler machine to measure those magnetic fields using quantum technology to measure those magnetic fields. So we wanted something that was wearable, like a hat. Here we are 3 years later, and actually this is what this is what our system looks like now. So it is a hat that children can wear, and they can move their head freely whilst they're being scanned. So this was the starting point, sort of 3 or 4 years ago, and this is where we are now, which is fantastic. So I'll say a little bit about what we did. So we're basing this device on something called optically pumped magnetometers, which are these little sort of Lego brick sized now. So the ones on the left were the initial sensors. The one on the right is what we're using now. These are Lego brick size sensors that you can mount in that helmet, so you can just about see them in that helmet there, and that they sit near the head and they measure these magnetic fields. I just want to say a little bit about some of the technical problems, because obviously it was a physics grant and there was lots of physics involved with it. So when we first started, we were using these sensors in a traditional way, and we were measuring the component of magnetic field going away from the head, so the radial component of magnetic field only. And we started to try and use these sensors in children, and sometimes we got amazing results and sometimes it was absolutely awful. And it took us a little while to realize that, so you can see here 3 MRIs of an adult, 4-year-old and 2-year-old, and you can see in the adult, the brain is actually quite a long way from the scalp surface. So there's quite a big gap between where we could put a sensor on the scalp and where the brain is. Whereas if we look in the 4-year-old and the 2-year-old, the brain is much, much closer. So what does that mean? Well, it means actually, if you only have a certain number of sensors, you get this sort of strange spatial aliasing. So what these colorful plots show is the sensitivity profiles in the brain of our array of sensors on the scalp. And you can see that there are hot spots in yellow and cold spots in blue. And this is why everything was so hit and miss. If you happen to get a sensor in the right place, you got a hot spot, you got a great result. And if you happen to get the sensor in the wrong place and you got a cold spot in the brain, then nothing worked. So we were able to design a new type of array using these things called triaxial sensors, which don't measure just the radial component of field, they measure all 3 components. And that really helped us to give us homogeneous coverage. The next problem was actually, if you move your head in a background magnetic field, you get these sort of very large magnetic field shifts. And we had to pull together new technologies to try and counter that by nulling the background magnetic field. And these are some of the results of that in a paper published a couple of years ago. So this is, if we don't control background field, then we're actually looking for a 6 Hertz response here that should be present in the red trace and not in the black trace. And you can sort of see it, but it is hard to see. Whereas if we control the background field, then we get a nice spike at 6 Hertz. And this is what started to tell us that we would be able to see effects in children, because children's brains run at a lower frequency than adults. So we needed to see down at these low frequencies, 4 to 8 Hertz. It's very important. I could talk all day about some of the technical things that we've done through this grant. I won't. I'll just show you a few cool results. So this was the first study we did in children, and this was a study that was actually in collaboration with a big hospital in Toronto, and we used, this was a simple study. This is what we said we would do in the grant. We stimulated, using a little sensory stimulator, the index and little finger of these children, and then what we were able to show was that, so this in blue is the area of the brain that was responding to little finger stimulation, and in red here, in index finger stimulation. So we were able to show very nicely that we can map brain function to very, very accurately. And this was just a single 6-year-old child. This is now more recent results, looking at visual stimulation. So you see these sort of weird patterns, and that introduces a and affecting the visual cortex, which is at the back of the brain. So we were able to work out where in the brain this visual stimulus was being processed. And also we were able to get accurate results down to 2 to 4 year olds. And you can see these results change. So this big yellow blob, this which are there in adults. So this is brain activity being measured. Big yellow blob that was there in adults is sort of there, but it's much less pronounced in children. And we were able to track that back to look at changes in brain chemistry and that were underlying that. So we had a canonical model of a cortical circuit, and we're able to show how inhibitory and excitatory neurotransmission changes in children. We've also got data now in epileptic children, which are still being processed but look very promising. So just a few sort of conclusions. I think we did, so the HIP grant enabled us to build this MEG system that can be used in children. And there were lots of technical challenges, things like triaxial sensors to improve coverage, background field control, detecting low frequency fields. But we've now managed to do two studies that show the viability of this system in children. So that's what we've been doing. I wanted to finish on maybe a few thoughts, although Thomas has already said most of them, and I agree with everything he said. So when we were starting this, we involved the clinicians early, and we also involved patients early. And I think, Thomas, you've already said this, but that was probably the best thing that we did. The reasons that I, as a physicist, was excited by this technology, that they're still valid, but they're not the same reasons as the medics were excited by it. And so what I mean by that is, so I was talking about we could get better sensitivity and all of this kind of stuff. And the medics came along and said, forget your better sensitivity. We just can't get children to be scanned. So if you've got a system that people can move around in, that's way more useful than if you can get super duper sensitivity. So that was really important, and it's a massive eye opener. That why you're excited by something is very different to why the clinicians might be. So involve them early, I think, is probably the key message. Similarly, PPI is important. Thomas, you've already said this. Don't do it because you're told to do it by EPSRC. Do it because it's really useful. And also, don't stop when you start the grant. Carry on doing it. So we kept talking to children through these latest 2 studies, and actually we now know things that we didn't know about the system that will help us go forward. And the last point I would make is industrial relations are key. That as an academic, we talk about impact all the time. In the field of healthcare, you can't have impact without actually a company ultimately taking on what you're doing and trying to sell it. It's that company that will ultimately have to take on the responsibility of things like compliance, medical device approval, FDA approval, whatever you want to talk about. So actually, whether you're going to spin out your own companies, whether you're going to work with existing companies, whether you've got industrial collaborators, they are absolutely key to realizing the impact of whatever it is that you're going to work on. This really has been a partnership between all the people in Nottingham, Circa, UCL, and QSpin. They were the initial partners. We've also brought on board other people on the way, including the University of Oxford, obviously Young Epilepsy, the National Quantum Technologies Programme, our friends and collaborators in Brussels and at Sick Kids. And thank you all for listening. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Matthew. That's really interesting, and thank you for highlighting the importance of working with the healthcare professionals, and I suppose highlighting the change in priorities that meant for you, and actually ensuring the end product was useful for the patients. So thank you for that. I haven't asked Matthew and Thomas whether they are happy to stay for the Q&A session, but I think there have been one or two questions that have come in directly for you. So we're just going to move to the demonstration of the Konfer platform first, but after that, if you wouldn't mind staying on, but if you have to move on, please do so. Okay, so the next part of our talk today is sorry, let me just get my screens. Is from the National Centre for Universities and Business, and the purpose of this, which I'm sure Anna will explain, is to explain and give a demonstration of the Konfer platform. So over to you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Would it be okay if I stole the share screen as well? Is that okay?
Yes, of course. I'll stop sharing now.
Okay, let me just share my screen very quickly and make sure I open on the correct one. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. Well, hello, everyone. It's really great to have the opportunity to present Konfer to you today. I'll just do a really quick intro and hand over to my colleague Tala to do a quick intro too. I'm Anna Dent-Davis. I am Universities Partnerships Manager at the National Centre for Universities and Business. I work with universities across the country to try and understand what their priorities are when it comes to engaging externally in terms of with industry and other academics, and helping them to identify those potential collaboration partners in a really targeted way using Konfer. I'll hand over to Tala for a quick intro, if that's okay, Tala.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So my name's Tala. I'm the Senior Programs Engagement Manager here at the NCUB. I work alongside Anna and a group of us that work on the Konfer platform, which will be demonstrated today. Just to say that Konfer is a completely free-to-use platform. It's very much designed to bridge that gap between academia and industry. We heard today how important it is to have industry on board with these sorts of projects. It helps universities and researchers directly connect with businesses and find research partners and industry partners beyond their usual reach. So hopefully this is a tool that you can use within this application as well as others, and we'll share our contact details through the Q&A, if that's okay, Andrew. I'll hand over to Anna now for the presentation.
Thank you, Tala. Just checking, you can see my slide.
Yeah.
Great, fab, thank you. Just to highlight a little bit more about what Tala was saying there, I want to just run you through some really quick just overview kind of details about Konfer, and then I'm going to go into the platform and show you our opportunity marketplace, where you can see some calls for collaboration and just delve into a couple of collaboration examples as well. So as Tala said, Konfer is a completely free to use targeted collaboration platform. It uses smart matching technology to notify businesses and experts about relevant opportunities, essentially. So I've highlighted targeted and relevant there because the real power of Konfer is in its ability to promote those very specific calls for collaboration. The examples that we've just heard are excellent kind of examples of that, the targeted nature of those. And we promote those to the people most likely to be interested in collaborating. So just to roll back a little bit, I'm not sure if anyone here maybe hasn't heard of the National Centre for Universities and Business. Konfer was developed by NCUB in partnership with UKRI and Research England. So it's a UKRI funded tool. So for this reason, it's completely free for universities and businesses to use and get value from. We're going to say that completely free many times, because sometimes I worry that that's a sort of a barrier, but absolutely it's free in all elements of what we do. A really key part of Konfer that enables us to do that matching is our directory. So we have a directory of over 72,000 innovation-ready businesses to whom we can promote very targeted calls for collaboration using our smart matching technology. So we have points of, so that's the directory. So I'll explain a bit more about that. We also have points of contact within all the UK universities, in most cases, multiple points of contact. So if you're looking for academic expertise, we can help connect you there too. And we have just over 6,000 Konfer users who are registered and actively logging in and searching Konfer to respond to opportunities and find collaboration partners. There are also a number of other databases on Konfer. So in addition to the directory, you can also access our experts database. That's over 153,000 UK experts. We have over 1.8 million pieces of research, 32,000 patents, 15,000 pieces of equipment, etc. So there's lots of information. We've tried to pull together as much information as possible about what's out there in the research and innovation ecosystem and make that searchable. So I'm just going to come up my slides and share my screen very quickly to show you Konfer itself. So if you navigate to konfer.online, you will find Konfer. You don't actually have to register to go in and access and see a lot of what's available on Konfer. But to register, you just simply navigate to this icon up here, and it will take you to the registration. It only takes 2 minutes to register and you're in. So this homepage is actually really useful. It highlights quite a lot.
Sorry, Anna, I can't see your homepage.
Okay, no problem. Bear with me a second. Let's get out of here then. Okay, so if I move that over, can you see that now?
No, I'll answer a quick question whilst you're
thank you.
sharing that screen.
No problem.
I saw a question come up about international partnerships. Whilst Konfer is very much focused on UK R&D and innovation, we do have international businesses posting collaborations, and you can find information from them trying to engage with the UK higher education system.
Okay, bear with me a second. Okay, hopefully you can see that.
Yes.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, I'm used to using Teams and Zoom is a little bit different. Okay. So the Konfer homepage, you can see a lot of information about what's available on Konfer, just highlighting what I just mentioned, and it takes you through what Konfer is in terms of this: search, discover, and engage. But I'm actually going to navigate over to the collaboration section, so into explore and through into collaborations, because I want to show you what we call our opportunity marketplace. So here you can see the 189 live calls for collaboration that we currently have on Konfer. So these have come from both universities and businesses, as well as other organizations seeking collaboration partners around very specific research or innovation activities. So you'll notice all of the collaborations that we have in Konfer are very targeted, and generally they have quite clear sort of titles in terms of who you're actually seeking to collaborate with. So just to go into an example, we have a nice example actually I was looking at this morning from Glasgow University. So we can see here, this is an academic from Glasgow University who is seeking waste producers to transform e-waste and composites into material source or revenue streams. So very clear title, and then you go into the two main areas of the collaboration call, which is the aim and the description. So if you imagine this, when this lands in the inbox of someone from industry or an academic within a university, they see the title first, an overview of the aim, and then when they click into the opportunity, they then get the opportunity to read through the call. So that title is really important, and then the aim also is really important. So you'll see as you navigate through some of these opportunities that generally the aim is quite clear. So this is looking to tackle challenges around recycling, and the aim is to work with industry specialists looking to upscale the recycling of these waste streams in a sustainable manner. And then we go into the description. We actually recently did an overview of the collaboration calls that generated the best connections on Konfer versus those that didn't do so well. And we identified that collaboration calls that perform really well generally tend to answer 4 quite simple questions. And they are, what is the challenge you're seeking to solve? What's the problem you're seeking to solve? Who you're looking to collaborate with? What you bring to the collaboration opportunity, and what's in it for the collaborator. So you'll see a lot of the descriptions generally sort of tend to take you through this flow. And actually the process of doing this can be really useful, because actually it can make you stop and think, you know, what is it we're trying to do, and who are we looking to collaborate with in terms of finding those partners. And as Matthew mentioned, it's really worth thinking about the collaboration at the beginning of the project, as opposed to sort of in the middle or at the end, where it can be more difficult to implement what you've actually learned from that partnership. And as Andrew mentioned, it's a requirement of this funding. So if you're interested in going for the funding, but you don't have a collaboration partner in mind, Konfer could really help you there. And if you have a partner, but you're looking to expand that, or you're looking to sort of develop these partnerships, we can absolutely support in that way as well. In terms of the collaborations must be really targeted, but actually the what you're trying to do with the partner can be really broad. So you don't have to be very developed in terms of your research project to really get use out of Konfer. It can be very early stage and say, you know, we have an interest in exploring research in this, and we're going to look to put a call out for consortia for people to come in and support and scope this particular challenge with us. It can be that you're looking to secure funding and that you're looking for partners specifically to come on board to support with that. It can be that you've already gained funding and you're looking to do that. Or it could be that you have a commercial, some IP or a commercial opportunity now scoped and sort of you have something shaped, and actually you're looking to take that to market and look for partners to support that process as well. So yeah, please do get in touch. I'm going to take you to another slide now and just have some kind of next steps on there. I am going to, bear with me a second. A new share. There we go. Slide 2. Okay, next steps. Oh, so we had a really nice testimonial actually come through the other day, and this was from someone, and it really succinctly summarized what Konfer did. And it said the problem Konfer solves is the difficulty or time spent trying to identify academics or businesses working in very specific fields who might be interested in collaborating. And I was like, yes, that's exactly what we do in a nutshell. So I thought I'd pop that on there. So what's next? How do you get started? So visit konfer.online. You can read our tips on getting started, and I can share some links in the chat. We have what we call conversation sessions, webinars that we put on to support anyone interested in finding a bit more information. So they will take you through Konfer and show you some real life examples and take you through some of our success stories as well. We've actually, so the conversation is actually happening right now. It's on the last Wednesday of every month. So we've actually put on a bonus conversation session next week on the 3rd of October, and this is going to be focused specifically around funding. So if you're looking to get a bit more detail, see a bit more of a kind of a detailed run through of Konfer, please do join that session. I'll post the link to that. Our next session then will be on the 24th of October. So we have 2 in October. We have guides to how to prepare a collaboration opportunity, those 4 questions that I mentioned. We can take you through that in a bit more detail. And there's links here to posting and responding to collaboration opportunities on Konfer as well. That's probably enough. I'm probably at time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anna and Tala, for that. Hopefully those in attendance will find the platform useful. Am I right in thinking that you have provided a contact detail should anybody have any questions for you regarding the platform?
Yes. Shall I pop that in the Q&A chat, or shall I send that via an email after, Andrew? What would be
if you
best?
can send that to me via email, and then we will upload that with the presentation and the FAQ document as well.
Excellent, will do.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Okay, so now we are moving on to the Q&A section, whereby hopefully we'll be able to answer as many of the questions that you have submitted. I will hand over to my colleague Kate to manage this session.
As a first question, which I hope will be a fairly quick one, there's one about whether the slides will be available after the webinar.
That is a yes. We'll try and upload them as quickly as we can once the webinar's finished. And that'll be available on the Funding Finder webpage.
There's a question whether a single proposal could involve developing multiple technologies, all at TRL2, or whether it should focus on advancing a single technology only.
My feeling is that you should really focus on a single technology unless you feel that the different technologies can be combined or complement each other, but I think the focus really should be on one.
There's a question about clinical trials. So they're not supported, but would the fund support validation of implantation of a medical device in patients, as this would be the most appropriate environment for an implant?
I think that might be one we have to take away, but to me that sounds a little bit higher on the TRL scale after proof of concept. Yeah, I think we'll have to answer that in the FAQ document, or if you'd like to send us an email.
I guess I'd ask the person who posed the question seems to think about what proportion of the total project or resources does that take? So where is the thrust of the proposal? And what we often say is sort of like, the headline that we will support as first in man. So it's those two things to think about. The reason we don't fund clinical trials is because we're not resourced to do it. There are other parts of the system. So just bear in mind about why this is really necessary and would add value through this particular funding route.
We have a question that highlights, we've said that we might draw on advice about the balance of funded applications. So the question is whether EPSRC aims to have a balanced number of applications across the three challenges.
No, is the answer. I think it's more for our appreciation of potentially if we were to run a second round of this call, whether we would potentially have a focus on that. I don't know, Philippa, you have anything to add?
And just to say, I mean, balance can mean quite a few things, and the challenges that were highlighted in our strategy is one of that. In practice, and we're still learning with this, is we want to get the best outcome from our funding, the fit to the funding opportunity, taking on board, particularly at the final decision stages, is the quality and the fit to the call, in this case, the potential for impact. But when there are proposals that are very similarly grouped, we will look at the extent to which we have a diverse set of proposals. And so, we would then have an active discussion about, how we do make that would be part of the decision-making process, but we don't have a formula. It's not applied that we would, ignore the other criteria. It's part of the final strategic discussion as we refine the rank ordered list, which is the instrument that EPSRC uses to then make its final funding decisions.
Thank you. There's a question for clarification. The HIP scheme required previous EPSRC funding. Is that no longer required in this scheme?
That's correct. That's one of the main changes for the HTTPS scheme, and one of the recommendations from the report. So we have opened this up to individuals who haven't necessarily received EPSRC prior funding.
However, we should say if it does build on EPSRC funding, we're always interested to know for a whole variety of reasons. But it is part of us as a sort of as a funder understanding the sort of the impacts of our research. So it's not a requirement, but if there is a relationship with previous EPSRC funding, we'd be helpful if you drew it to our attention. But it won't affect the assessment.
There's a question about PPIE leads and whether they would be a co-investigator or co-lead, or whether they would be added under specialist.
So I believe my understanding is that they would be added as a specialist. Is that right, Kate?
So it means that we're looking to comply with the arrangements being agreed across UKRI. So at the moment, it's still a bit of a work in progress. If you need clarification on this, do please drop us an email at healthcare@epsrc.ukri.org. But there is guidance on the website. You might find it under MRC.
But I say it's really, we're asking people to involve them in the most appropriate way. But if you would like them to be a co-investigator, as I'm sure I noticed that Kate had responded to a few of the questions during the other presentations were taking place, is they still need to be eligible as defined under our current eligibility rules.
So we have a question about how this can dovetail with impact acceleration accounts. I'm not sure everybody on this call will be familiar with what an impact acceleration account is.
Okay, so I think our idea is that this opportunity does kind of dovetail into the wider landscape, and impact acceleration accounts are one aspect of that. We feel that impact acceleration accounts tend to operate at a slightly higher TRL that we can go up to, moving away from initial validation and moving beyond proof of concept. So the IAAs could potentially be something that you apply for within your universities after completion, or possibly during a successful award. Yes, so they could work together and form just one part of the landscape. But obviously there are other schemes that you can apply for to translate your proposal after the end of the HTTPS scheme.
The practical thing that I might mention that I've understood in discussion with colleagues and researchers over the years is also the scale of the resources. I mean, what an IAA is support, is often is providing more modest support to to encourage onward translation. I mean, what this call offers is not end-to-end support for ideas, but it is more significant support to really develop promising ideas towards deployment in a healthcare setting.
We have a question about whether we could describe better what we consider to be product development. So I think this is very much about that threshold up to proof of concept, and where does proof of concept start to become product development?
So again, I think this is something that we can potentially provide a little bit more detail in the FAQ document, but I think generally product development for me starts when you move out of the lab and start testing in more relevant scenarios and involving larger numbers of animals or patients. But yes, we can clarify that in the FAQ document.
Okay. So we have a few more questions which are broadly in that area, which I think you've just largely answered. We also have a number of questions about Konfer. So I think the plan there is that we refer those to NCUB.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, we have a question about whether Konfer includes clinical contacts, for example.
Go.
So I can say, so clinical contacts, not specifically. We work primarily with universities and businesses. So if you're seeking contacts around healthcare or anything relating to healthcare within industry, we can connect you that way. You may be able to connect with some clinical contacts that way. And similarly within universities, we can connect you directly with research centres or academics within the university. We don't have links into healthcare specifically into NHS, so it would be through those two avenues that we would support that.
That's not to say, sorry, just to quickly follow on, that's not to say that if healthcare providers want to set up a collaboration on Konfer, we would happily support that.
Yes, absolutely. So that's how you would access the business directory. If you put a call into Konfer, we would match you with the most relevant businesses in the directory that are absolutely perfectly aligned to that. And then you can kind of network in that way. Thanks, Tala.
Thank you. There's a question about what's expected in the translational plan about further support. So is this support after the end of the project, or support which will be sought during the project?
So we believe it to be both. So obviously the bulk of the work will be carried out during the research itself, but we want you to have a consideration and think about those onward steps that both Thomas and Matthew mentioned. Obviously flexibility is important, so we don't expect a plan which is set in stone, but we would like you to have shown that you have given this consideration and also thought about the criteria that you need to fulfill in order to access that support.
We have a question about proposals containing both elements of TRL2 and TRL 3.5, and whether a proposal could have both.
Yes, it can do, so long as the proposal itself is being used to accelerate translation of whatever it is that is at TRL2 and TRL 3.5, but obviously there is a limit at TRL 3.5, and we're aware that that is somewhat subjective, but please send us an email directly to get clarification for that.
We had a question about whether software device development was eligible for support. I suspect that this might be about whether information and communication technologies are included, although there was the way the question's phrased, it could possibly be about whether it's about the device development, which again is getting back towards those, whether it's going beyond proof of concept.
Yes, and obviously the impact and the benefit needs to be felt within the UK health sector.
Yeah, okay. We have a question about commercial and industrial partners and how much do they need to be involved in terms of technology and funding? Do they also need to co-fund part of the technology? Can there be more than one commercial partner? And do the preliminary results need to be already published or need to be in development? So there's quite a few parts to that question. If we lose track, I'll repeat them as we go.
So we encourage multiple partnerships. What we expect from the partnerships, they can provide in-kind or cash support. They essentially the purpose is to have those partners on to help you navigate the translation pathway. And what were the final aspects of the question, Kate? Sorry.
So there was a question about whether they need to co-fund part of the technology, or or whether the preliminary results need to be already published or need to be in development.
I'd say they don't necessarily need to be published. Anything that is published obviously will provide a stronger case for your application, but it's definitely not a pre-requirement.
So we have a question.
Funding, just to emphasise it in case anybody's, I mean, when we talk about partnership, we talk about means of engagement, and it's either time, sort of some non-cash resource, or a cash contribution. If it doesn't meet, that or something broadly equivalent, we wouldn't consider them to be in a partner. So you might involve industry in a variety of ways, but if you want to call them a partner, that's what we understand a partnership to mean.
We have a question about what data collections would be eligible for this call, and that sounds like it might be quite project specific. So I'd suggest, could we perhaps have an email to healthcare@epsrc.ukri.org for that one, please? There's also a question about whether we can include PPIE as COI in the application, and I think we've already addressed that one, that standard eligibility applies. So project leads and co-leads need to be eligible for that role on an EPSRC research grant. There's a question that we have a technology which has been tested in patients. However, to make it effective, we need to carry out fundamental neuroscience engineering studies. Would this be suitable?
So it sounds like the key word there is fundamental, and it obviously needs to fit within our window. So anything that is too fundamental and too basic is out of scope for this opportunity. But as we've alluded to a couple of times already, it's difficult to get some perspective here without a little bit more information. So please do send us an email with a little bit more, and we can provide more information there.
So there's a question about whether we could see any examples of translation and PPIE plans.
We don't have any. We provided guidance about what they might be, and as you know, but they, I would encourage you maybe to, within your networks and community, you may find that colleagues are able to share them that, but we don't have a template, and at this point in time, we're not proposing to develop more rigorous templates. We hope there's sufficient guidance in the call to allow applicants to construct appropriate plans that are relevant and meaningful for what they want to do and are appropriately resourced.
There's been a couple of questions about the mandatory requirement for a clinical or healthcare professional to be involved in a project. And the questions are about whether a clinician or other role could be that connection. Is there any description or outline that we have on who we expect to be fulfilling that role, please?
No, we've deliberately not been prescriptive on the description of what a clinical or healthcare professional can be. It's, in our definition, it's anybody who can provide that insight of the end product or access to the end users, if it is indeed them, and perhaps they can provide access to the appropriate patient groups as well, so they can really provide that end user input. And it's obviously been highlighted the importance of doing that at the beginning of the project.
Okay. There's a question about whether the commercial partner needs to be a large established company, or whether it could be used to support the commercialization through a startup based on this technology.
So the project partners don't need to be large established companies. I think one of the things that you'll be assessed upon is the appropriateness of the partners relative to what it is that you're trying to achieve, and whether they are the most appropriate partner. So it really is project specific there.
There's a question about whether there will be subsequent calls to this one, and what is the planned cycle for calls in the future, if there is one.
There are no firm plans as of yet. I think after the conclusion of this opportunity, we will have a think and look at the proposals that have been funded and make a subsequent decision there.
Okay. There's mention of balance, but how would multiple applications from the same research group, focusing on different technologies, with different PIs, but some overlap in the research team, be treated if both were deemed as fundable?
I might pass that one on to Philippa, if that's okay.
Well, we haven't put a restriction in the call, so they would be considered individually on their own merits. We've already addressed the question about when we come to refining the final rank ordering, the issue of balance is a consideration. And as you know, we're keen to engage the whole UK in sort of research and innovation. So it's something that's part of the conversation, but we've not emphasised something as a criteria for this call. The question that does get asked is, does it make sense that these are being pursued as individual projects? Is is that a desirable thing, or has it in some way reduced the potential impact of the research? So it's for you to make the case individually, but certainly we will assess in the first instance all the projects on their own individual merits.
So there is a question about whether a collaborating company needs to be UK based.
No, the company does not need to be UK based, but the benefit of having them on board and the overall benefit and impact of the proposal needs to be felt within the UK. There can be benefits outside of the UK, but fundamentally and essentially it needs to be felt in the UK.
Can a proposal span two of our challenges? So I think this is referring to prevention, prediction, diagnosis, and interventions or therapies.
Yes, absolutely. We have no restrictions on applying through multiple challenges.
With the clinical partner, do they have to be partners or project partners or co-leads? Have we prescribed any specific role?
I think it depends on how much you envisage the clinical partner to be involved. I think we've stated on the core document that clinicians and healthcare professionals can be eligible as a co-I, but they can also be listed more as a fringe member of the team as well, if that is the level of involvement that they have.
We have a question where I'm not sure if we're going to need some clarification of what they mean. Is it correct to say that this funding call is exclusively on health technologies and not really on health predictive analytics, brackets, of course, with translational scope? I'm not quite sure if I understand what the question means.
Yes, that might be one we have to take offline.
But I just say,
In which case,
we've talked about meeting a health need. And so use the word technology, and particularly when we frame about it and think about the market. So the answer isn't immediately no, but I'm curious as to how we would frame it as a health need and that onward plausible pathway through to impact, showing that benefit. Yeah, and I shall leave it there.
Thank you. In which case, I'll ask our anonymous attendee if they would like to drop us a line at healthcare@epsrc.ukri.org. Thank you. And as soon as I go to click on it, my questions suddenly scroll up and down my screen. Sorry about that. So one of the questions is about whether market analysis or proof of market is an eligible cost for the translation plan.
I think that the bulk of the work needs to be the work that you're carrying out during the actual grant itself, but we would like you to consider some of the aspects which you will be carrying out further on. So I think that is eligible so long as it doesn't take up the bulk of the application. Because obviously market analysis and competition analysis is essential and it needs to be done, and it can impact the makeup of the project and you know the product or the technology that you do make up.
Thank you. How much cutting down of proposal numbers is planned between the outline and the full proposal stage?
So it really depends on the numbers that we receive for this call, but as we mentioned on one of the slides, we're looking to fund between 7 and approximately 20 if everybody applied for the smallest amount. But after the first stage, we would expect the success rate to be a lot higher, so approximately around about 50%. I don't know if Philippa or Kate would like to add anything to that.
30 to 50%. It very much depends. I mean, if we wouldn't take through proposals next to the stage unless we thought there was a plausible likelihood of them being funded. Obviously, we are expecting, based on past experience, you know, a number of very high quality proposals. But I wouldn't want to be put on the spot. But Andrew is absolutely right. We do try, both in terms of the effort for the applicants, but also so that we can carry out credible, high quality peer review.
We have a question which is about how to include a business partner if their business is not in the list. It sounds like there is some list somewhere of EPSRC approved businesses, but if there is, I'm afraid I haven't come across it. Anybody else?
It sounds like a misunderstanding to me, and we'd be happy to clarify. We don't have a list. We work with a number of organisations that we call EPSRC strategic business partners. That is separate to how business might get involved in individual projects and programmes.
There's a question about whether discovering new medicines is in the remit of this call.
So this is a health technologies call. So I think it really depends on the specifics of the application there, but the bulk of the application needs to be to provide new engineering physical sciences research or novelty within that area.
There's a question about whether it's a technology that needs to be developed, or can it be some new software technique to help clinicians analyse data and get a better understanding of their patient?
It comes up to your judgment about how much significant new knowledge, technology development, and whether it's appropriate for EPSRC, who we support research towards application. We don't support software development, but sometimes that might be part of an integrated program of research.
Yeah.
So it's the added value to EPSRC funding and the appropriateness of the funding. And sometimes it's clear cut, and we've tried to find as much guidance and clarification as we can. But sometimes the honest answer is depends, and we at that point will draw on advice from experts.
We get a lot of questions about, for example, artificial intelligence, and where it is a known or existing approach, which is simply being applied to either a new data set or a new problem, then it's not going to be appropriate for EPSRC. If you're in doubt, because there's a lot of grey area here about where the application of an existing approach might mean development of it in order to work in that circumstance. And if that's the case, please drop us a line, because it will be specific to the project that you have in mind, and you can just send those through to healthcare@epsrc.ukri.org. Thank you. So I think we had said that we were planning to go until about 11:30. We still have 12 questions open at the moment across a range of topics. One of the most common is really looking for clarification about the boundary between proof of concept and product development and the TRL levels for this particular funding opportunity. Would anybody like to talk a little bit further on that one about the TRL level and whether the idea and concept is validated and whether that would be eligible?
I think on the Funding Finder webpage we have listed some details about that. I think we are probably happy to provide a little bit more information related to the specific project if you send us an email, because yeah, I'm not sure that necessarily apply to all the attendees who are looking for answers here at the moment.
Can I, and I don't know if Matthew and Thomas are still on the call, and they may not want to join in, but from their perspective as academics and having undertaken this research, I'd be interested if they wanted to give any thoughts about how, as a researcher, you know, what their view is about what distinguishes one type of activity perhaps from the other. Please don't feel obliged, but I'd be interested to know what you thought. And you patiently stayed for the end, so how can we not give you an opportunity to say a little bit more if you wanted?
Thanks, Philippa. I always feel it should be demonstrated in some sort of real application. So just doing things in the lab is not the point of the exercise. You have to show it works. And we previously, so we specified we test 30 blood samples from real patients from the hospital, and we did that, and that was accepted when we applied for funding. I think that this is a sort of level where I would argue this is the difference between proof of concept and then clinical trial.
Okay, we've got a question about.
Well, no, sorry, Philip. I want to hear Philippa's answer to this.
Sorry. Well, as I said, there isn't. I mean, we've tried to give as much insight as we can, but we didn't really want to go to the old school, you know, Encyclopedia Britannica. And it depends. So how people have interpreted it, and I guess as a society, we're more case law driven, haven't we? And I would argue having that open to interpretation is very valuable. So your experiences of it and insights are very helpful, Thomas. Similarly, if you wanted to throw in anything, Matthew, please feel free. Or if you want to stay silent, that's absolutely fine.
I guess I just to say I agree with what Thomas just said. You know, in our case, we were trying to develop a system for children. You start with adults, but when we started scanning children, we came across problems that we just didn't know existed. You know, silly things. Children move in different ways to adults. They move faster. They tend to make sharper movements, kind of stuff like that. at the end of the day, whenever you're doing these things, the proof of the pudding is does it actually work for the case that you're trying to build it for? So yeah, I mean, completely agree.
I guess I would say we have a generous and broad interpretation of what proof of concept means and how we will fund it.
If I can chip in an observation, that this is one of the reasons why we're encouraging the public and patient involvement and engagement, and for that to be quite inclusive. So with responsible research and innovation, you are encouraged to try and anticipate the impact it might have on people and who it might be having an impact on. And that's engagement with those people at an early stage is usually going to help make your research better. We have, perhaps, I'm just looking for an idea of timing here, but are we moving into the last questions for answering live?
Yes, yeah, I think so.
We have
Last few
one about resubmission policy, and if an outline doesn't make it through to the full proposal stage, could a research grant proposal based on that outline come in through our standard route?
So I think we'd need to check our policies there, but my understanding is generally we don't accept resubmissions, but I think if it's been rejected at the outline stage, then I think there's a possibility that it can be, but we'd need to check that.
I would just say, I mean, I would be surprised if having not been successful at the outline stage for a targeted opportunity, people didn't want to change their ideas and the proposal would naturally change before the next stage. But it's more at the latter stages where if we've undertaken peer review of it, we wouldn't expect that application to be resubmitted and invited to EPSRC or other parts of UKI.
And also it's important to highlight that our standard mode opportunities, they have different assessment criteria, so therefore the proposal may have to be significantly modified to fit that.
So should we have just one last question, and then any remaining open questions we will endeavour to answer in our FAQs, which we will look to upload onto the additional information section of the funding opportunity on the website as soon as we can following this webinar. So one last question about whether accelerating the development of antimicrobials would be covered in this call.
So I think, again, this comes down to whether the novelty or the new knowledge gains falls within the engineering and physical sciences. Yeah, and I can leave it there. Okay, well, just like to say thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for all our speakers, and we wish you the best of luck with your applications. And we'll conclude the webinar there. Thank you.